For In a Liberated Future, I Imagine, we invited 6 artists and practitioners and cultural workers that we're deeply inspired by and that we deeply admire to respond to that title provocation, In a Liberated Future, I Imagine. For our first session, I am honoured to introduce Joon Lynn Goh and Alan Lane, and I'll read their bios, even though I feel like they're both icons. Literally, I'm going to read their bios anyway. So Alan Lane is the artistic director of Slung Low, an outdoor theatre company based in South Leeds, from the oldest working men's club in Britain, the Holbeck, who Slung Low have been doing extraordinary work anyway. And I think that there's been a sort of added visibility from their coronavirus response. But I think for me, what was super important was that Alan and his team were doing this work long before the current crisis that we find ourselves in, and an acknowledgement of the ongoing crises that our country faces and that many of our communities live in every day. So welcome, Alan. Joon Lynn is a cultural organiser working across art, migrant movements, popular education and solidarity economies to explore creative shifts from extractive to regenerative ways of living. Joon Lynn is the founding organiser of Migrants in Culture, a network organising for culture without borders. Also the co-founder of Asia Arts Activism, a research network for Asian diasporic practitioners, and Sex with Cancer, cancer patient-led inquiry into illness and intimacy. Joon Lynn is a recipient of Champion of the Year, Women on the Move Award 2016, Live Art UK Diverse Actions Leadership Bursary 2017, and declined an MBE for services to equality in 2019. So both Joon Lynn and Alan are absolute forces. We're deeply inspired by their work. We're so grateful to be joined by them both and very honoured for everything that you've both been leading. So very pleased to hand over Joon Lynn and Alan. Thank you.
Thanks, Amara, and everyone at MAIA. Alan and I just a few moments ago decided we're going to tell 2 stories. So I'll start with one, and then Alan will continue. And then we're just going to open it up to any questions or conversations. So feel free to, just ask us, let's start a conversation, because as Amara said, there's so many amazing people in this, in this call. Okay, I'll begin. I am writing from the 12th floor of my block, which now meets the sea's edge on the 5th. Floors 5 to 8 are contingency for sudden risers, but from the 9th upwards, we are a stable organizing unit in the neighborhood. England is being evacuated. In my lifetime, I witnessed Great Britain become a small island, first in metaphor and then in reality. After a long retreat from nearly 80% of the world's map, it separated from Europe, relinquished the United Kingdom, and became England. As a small island, even this began to disappear. From my balcony, the top halves of office shards that once were the city and Canary Wharf frame my east to west. Every other building lies beneath a sparkling silver plate, and this morning a full-bellied sun. This is the ending of one world, but the beginning of many others. The great adaptations didn't start with the 2020 pandemic, although this can be disputed, but after a decadent inter-pandemic year and the outbreak of a much deadlier strand in 2023. Of the many things that happened in the next decade, the care strike was one of the early defining events. A mass movement of healthcare workers, carers, domestic workers, refuse collectors, transport workers, and delivery drivers withdrew their labor. It was a highly divisive strategy, but on the 6th day, the very near collapse of every service forced the majority of their demands through. It became impossible for politicians not to fundamentally overhaul policies and budgets to recenter the work of care. I remember later the gradual abandonment of schools, offices, and urban centers as we knew them, and a proliferation of Saturday schools, teaching circles, harvest centers, and civic fields that started popping up around the country. Rejecting compliance with increasingly extreme clauses of the Patriotic Education Code was made easier because of dwindling state funding. Young people, parents, teachers started developing and sharing curricula grounded in histories of resistance and organizing, and creative workshops for children to play, experiment, and develop skills for their future. Similarly, for adults, there was an increasing momentum for and acceptance of the living week, space, time, and attention to reorganize our lives and livelihoods. We started collectivizing the ownership and governance of resources, building sustainable food systems, practicing conflict transformation skills, learning how to heal our tired spirits, and testing out forms of collective governance and accountability. This decade passed quickly for me as I took part in as many community-led experiments, prototypes, and initiatives as I could. It felt like a time in which we could finally take a breath from holding the pretense of an old world. We let go of playing the game, sneaking out resources, disguising our actions, hiding our true selves. We let go of the mentality of survival. And with it came a sudden release of energy from every street and block. We gave ourselves permission to invest in our futures. I watched friends, neighbors, and a new generation become the leaders they were always meant to be, and was humbled by the news from around the world on how fundamentally things were changing. Rather than singular solutions or universal blueprints, we shared learnings and often scaled out rather than up. We made changes from where we stood and where we could, in the knowledge that we were all weaving something stronger together. We began to appreciate that making change is a craft. That whilst change is seeded from our anger, our needs, and our dignity, that the worlds we wanted to usher in and the ways in which we wanted to be needed intricate practice. We began to see infrastructure, systems, spaces, and disciplines as vessels to be imagined, shaped, polished, and remade. We began to see that it was these vessels that helped us hold our diverse energies, our differences, our changing ways, and the futures we had begun to see and feel. Sea levels really began to rise in 2050 and began to rise faster than predicted, despite everything we had done. It was this reality that became a tipping point for a global network of municipalities, a network that now brings together a rich mix of platforms organized around place, fearless villages, solidarity suburbs, rebel cities, brave coasts, and other end of the world platforms. Whilst ongoing community organizing and governance has shaped these platforms, and we are proud of what we have achieved, we do wonder if we are ready for this moment. Across the world, municipalities have doubled efforts in preparation and coordination for the time of evacuations. I am one of 153 million people, the first phase of migration from Europe, Latin America, Sub-Saharan Africa, and Southeast Asia. This is the end of the world, but the beginning of many others. When I leave England, I will not be a refugee or migrant, nor will I be a citizen. Statuses such as these have ceased to be relevant. They have ceased to be weaponized. For something that was so concrete and real in my lifetime, it's hard to describe how the reality and need for borders began to crumble in people's imaginations and daily lives. For some, it came hand in hand with the slow decline of central governments. For others, the daily organizing, growing, negotiating, governing, welcoming, and resolving conflict gave people a practical experience of how we could live without fear. fear that had been so well manipulated and inflated. Our family had decided to go to one of the high ground towns that has been twinned with Bethnal Green. In spring, there will be 360 of us moving. I have already been in conversation with the town's platform, with its circle of elders, of which I now am at the right age to join. And we have been exploring the possible roles I could take on, the skills I could share, and the histories I must record. More than anything, though, I'm really looking forward to walking the hills and feeling the ground beneath my feet. It's been a really long time. But let us see. I will need time to build relationships, to understand my place, to feel whether I belong, and whether I choose one day to call my new town home. In my last block meeting, we finished with a farewell that has become common in the time of evacuations. Go home well. Go home well. It's a saying infused with hope and new beginnings, a saying reclaimed from a very different kind of go home that I remember from my childhood and not too long ago. Is this the liberation we were waiting for? It certainly isn't the utopia I dreamt of. The time we are living in holds far too many disasters, too many consequences of our old ways, too many people we have loved and lost, and too many ruins that still distract and seduce. But we are doing it. We are practicing it. It is becoming our everyday. We are living our imaginations.
Boom.
I'm going to pass to Alan.
Yeah, I'm going to give that a minute. That's wowzers. All right. Okay. Thank you, man. That was great. I'm many things, but at my core, I'm a theatre director. That's what I do. That's how I understand the world. So when I get something like in a Liberated Future, I imagine I do what artistic directors do. I find a comfy chair. It's a chair for thinking, and I sit in it, and I get maybe I get a pencil and one of those really fancy books that cost too much money because I'm going to do some creative thinking. And when I got this, when this came through, I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to liberate the world with my imagination. I'm a foolish man. I am a foolish man. I was like, I'm going to imagine. I'm going to wish away all the problems. I'm going to imagine a utopia. And I kept doing it. I kept sitting in my thinking chair because I am a foolish man. I didn't really get anywhere. I couldn't. And one of the things we talk about in Slung Low is that everything must be questioned. Everything must be, if we're asked by one of our funders to become a charity, we question why, we question what that means. If one of us has a child and we question what that means, we try as much as we can because we know, exactly as was introduced, that if we don't imagine, then we can't have new. So when we were asked at the beginning of this COVID crisis to help out with some social care referrals, to basically become a food bank, we decided we would question what was there and how we might imagine a new future. And the system we took over was pretty broke. The system we took over meant that if you were a sex worker in our area, a little part of South Leeds, Holbeck and Beeston, 7,500 houses, if you're a sex worker, you couldn't have a food parcel because the people who run the food bank, I don't know, didn't believe that sex workers needed food, or thought that maybe the food would encourage. I don't know, but them were the rules. And the system we took over was broken. If you needed a food parcel in Holbeck and Beeston, you could only have 3. It didn't matter how quickly you had those 3. You could have 3 in a week, or you could have 3 in 6 months, but you could never have a 4th because you might become addicted to food. You might become addicted, so goes the logic, to food parcels, and that couldn't do. So there was a lock on 3, and there were other things, but I've only got 5 or 10 minutes, and I can't explain to you the full extent of the absolute batshit craziness of the food bank system we took over, which is a tiny little system in a tiny little place called Holbeck and Beeston, 7,500 houses. In the grand scheme of things, in the grand scheme of the world, it's nothing. But you all right, buddy? All right, I'm just imagining a better world. All right, you keep it real, kid. I'm just talking to these people. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm imagining. Are you? Are you going to come say hello? All right, this is happening in real life. Okay, so look at this. Say hello to these people. I am talking to them about, you know, we give all the food to the people.
Oh, I thought you meant actually imagining.
I'm not. Okay, you go. I love you. So he just said, I thought you were actually imagining, but you're just practicing. So we can take that as my card is marked. So the system we inherited from the food bank, 7,500. See, this is improv right here, right now. 7,500 houses. It's a tiny little system in a tiny little place, and it was completely broken. And we knew, I knew. Let's be honest. I don't want to drag the other team into this foolishness. I knew I could imagine it better. I could. It was really simple. I was going to liberate the world with my imagination. Just that little part of the world, 7,500 households in a little part of Leeds, in a little country, on a big planet, with my imagination, because I'm a foolish man. And we decided there would be a rule. If you need food in Holbeck and Beeston, all you have to do is ask. Now, the people that we took over from and the people who give us the food, and the system has a whole phrase for this, it's non-means tested self-referral food bank. But that's not what we understand it. We understand it is we're telling a story. And the story is, if you need food in Holbeck and Beeston, you will not go hungry. You will simply give me your name and address and we will deliver food. I don't need you to tell me your narrative. I don't need you to justify yourself. I don't need anything, because we don't want to be like the people that we took over from. So if you ask for food, you simply get it. And I honestly, because I am a foolish man, I thought I would transform the world with my imagination. That little part of the world, not the whole world. I would liberate that little thing in that place. I'm a governor of a primary school. I personally think if I was made in charge of stuff, I would make every artistic director who's paid a salary become a governor of a primary school. Otherwise, they would not be an artistic director of a theatre company anymore. This is one of my things, but I'm a governor of a primary school. And it's actually just a lot of paperwork. I thought maybe it would be lots of fun and stuff, but it's actually just a lot of paperwork. But it's important paperwork, and it's important people do it. And yeah, I'm a governor of a brilliant primary school. It's called Ingham Road. I'm incredibly proud of the head teacher and the teacher there, and the children there. They're amazing. Ingham Road speaks more languages than any other school in the city, which I think is brilliant. And every single child who starts reception there will not end year 6. They'll be moved, or they'll move. It's the only school that's true of in our city. And as a result, what we focus on there is making sure that the children who leave aged 11 are ready to be citizens in this world. And so the head teacher there, who's called Sarah, who is my absolute hero, concentrates on making sure that they visit the local theatre company, that they know how to tell stories, that they meet people, different types of people, that they know how to talk to all types of people, that they are rounded as best they can be. Ofsted does not value this school very much, and it is the proudest thing I am involved in. The best thing about being a governor is not the paperwork, but is being invited to fun stuff. The most fun thing is Christmas lunch. So I get to go to Oak class, who are in year 6. That's about 10 for those of you who don't have any rugrats. And I have lunch because it's COVID. We're not allowed to go into the playground, so we have to sit around our tables. But we mime to Mariah Carey Christmas carols, and I tell dad jokes, and the children laugh at me because I am a foolish man, and it is joyful. And all the children on free school meals and who have bought into the school system there, where you get a meal and get a Christmas lunch. This is not a good Christmas lunch, it has to be said. I'm not criticizing it, it's nutritious and it's all, but it is not a Christmas lunch that will make you very happy. And about 2/3 of the children in this year 6 are eating it, and they're loving it. They cannot believe Christmas lunch is so exciting. We're having vegetarian turkey and roast potatoes, and there are so many jokes about Brussels sprouts. I do not have the time to tell you them all, but they were all top notch. And a third of the class are not having this lunch. They're eating their packed lunch, and they've got various things food I don't recognise, food I do recognise. There are different reasons as to why people bring their packed lunches in. And the girl in front of me, and we'll call her Zara, it's not her name, but we'll call her Zara. She's got a little one of those soft edges packed lunch boxes. And whilst we're talking, she keeps her hand is tiny and it sneaks through the opening in the zip, tiny little opening in the zip. And it comes out with some food. You can see it's too small. She puts it like that. And I'm eating my appalling Christmas lunch. There are some vegetarian sausages there that I don't think actually, I don't know what they are, but we're having fun doing it. And then the teacher points out from the other side that I have hidden my Brussels sprout. I hate Brussels sprouts. I've hidden my Brussels sprouts underneath some food, but I am to eat my Brussels sprout because the game today is that's the game. The governor must eat the Brussels sprout. So I put it into my mouth, but I genuinely gag. I'm not being a foolish man. I'm actually like, oh God, I'm going to be sick because Brussels sprouts are so disgusting. And Zara in front of me laughed. They're all laughing because I am a foolish man, and they're laughing. And she slips, and the box opens, and for a second I get to see what's inside, and then she covers it up again. And what's inside is a half styrofoam box with half a piece of chicken and some of those chips that you only get in kebab shops from yesterday. It's cold, and that's her lunch. And I don't say anything. Of course, I don't say anything, and goes on. And then afterwards, when I'm with the teacher, I say, "Oh, Zara was eating some cold chicken and chips, and what's that about? Can you just, because I don't want to overstep. I might have got this wrong, but also it feels to me like that's not a great lunch." And she says, "Oh no, her parents won't accept the free school meals." And I'm like, I don't understand. He said they insist on sending it. And I don't understand this. This has happened 6 weeks ago. I'm meant to be reasonably smart. I still don't understand. I don't understand. I don't get it. We made food free. We made food guilt-free. We completely, I can't tell you the arguments we had with the people who ran the food bank before us and the people who supply the food. We smashed them with our righteousness. Like, seriously, we smoked the fuckers. The rules are different in Holbeck and Beeston. And I can't get food. I can't get, this food is free. It's a lorry full of it outside where I work. The food is free and I can't get it into that packed lunchbox. And I'm a foolish man. It was my imagination that was ever going to liberate anyone. What an idiot. What a theatre director. In my city, there is an opera company. In my city, there is a ballet company. In my city, there is a theatre that produces big shows for lots of money and people dance and sing and the set moves. In my school, I'm a governor of our children who arrive with no books and they will leave with no books unless we give them books. Kali Fiari is one of my heroes. She's the new artistic director of Leeds 2023. She's a mighty and magnificent woman. She's the artistic director of a whole city. And the first thing she does, of course she does, she's my hero. The first thing she does when she gets the job is she goes to a primary school. She meets the children and she says to them, "What would you like Leeds 2023 to do for you?" And one of the girls there, and I don't know her name, but we're going to call her Zara. She says, "I want crayons." And Kali says, no, this is a big thing. We're going to be like the capital of culture. We're going to be the shining beacon for the whole nation. What would you like to see? And she says, "I want crayons because when I go home, I'd like to finish the drawings I started at school." There are children in my city without crayons, and we have an opera company. And I don't know how my imagination will liberate that. And I know now, because of the food thing, that it won't. I'm a foolish man. I can do what I can do from where I am, and I'll continue to do it and hope that it's my best. I know it won't be enough. But I wonder about Zara. I wonder about Zara and what happens if she gets crayons. Maybe she gets the food that she wants, not the food that they have. How amazing her imagination might be. And I don't know whether it will be enough to liberate us all. I don't know whether enough would be enough to make sure everyone has crayons. But I know with all my heart that it will be better than my imagination and she'll liberate more. And that's the thing I thought about when I was asked to think about this. How you doing, Joon Lynn? It's intense this morning, isn't it?
Yeah. I guess we're going to have a conversation, but everyone is going to chip in.
I mean, I hope so, because we've already heard a lot from me and you. Can I ask a question to get going? Is that all right? I don't know. I think we're in charge. I keep looking at Mara and she's like,
Yeah,
I don't know, you're in charge.
You got it.
Okay. Do you, I was really in your world, like literally your world, Joon, and I was thinking about it. Do you have hope that real change is possible without catastrophe? That's the thing I thought. Do we have to burn it all down to rebuild it? Or do you think we can shift direction halfway?
I think we're constantly living in ruins. And these things are happening simultaneously. So I know there was quite a lot of catastrophe in what I imagined, but actually to me, I found it really hopeful because it was what we were doing to adapt to changing circumstances and how we were cooperating and learning how to transform ourselves in the very concrete local ways that could be possible. And I talked about how these ruins can still seduce us and still distract us. And I think that's the stage that we're always constantly going to have to navigate, that we've always got people saying, no, invest in the old system, invest in capitalism, invest in extraction. And we're always constantly trying to find the other ways of doing things, which is why this grouping of people here is so special, because it's often hard to talk about these things when there's so much trying to distract and seduce you, because it's easier, right? Like at the moment, the coordinated vaccination across Europe is slower than the British version. So, you know, everyone in England's like, haha, this is what it means to leave Europe. Look, we can do it faster. And Europe, who are trying to coordinate across many countries and to get the right regulation around things, they're in the losing position now. And so I think that this is like a really good example of how at this moment in time, you know, life and death is really seducing. Let's do it quicker. Let's do it faster. But this is the kind of world we're living in, or we're always living in these ruins, and we're always living in things that are trying to emerge. And I think I think the last year, it's been very, very hard to place energy on dreaming the future, but also thinking about how to mitigate harm in the present. And I don't know about you, and you know, I've read stuff that you've written about working in the food bank and how tired you are, but I wonder, like, why do people think it's so weird for a theater company to run a food bank? Why is that so weird? I don't know if you can,
well, it's because,
you can reflect.
Yeah, no, I know it's because we have fun. I mean, I feel like if I can only see Amara and you as faces, but I think we probably fundamentally agree on the kind of basic mechanics DNA of what a theatre company or a group of artists or any of that might be for, and they aren't for selling tickets. And the last year has been so demoralizing for us to realize that we do not share that vision of what we might be for, or the extent to which we might do things, or with the majority of our industry, who are a bit like, oh, why aren't you putting on Annie? And you're like, how would I respond to this moment by putting on a production of Annie? Yeah, it's the most frustrating question, because actually it's not really to do with us. A lot of the time it's to do with people, especially from people of position of power, sort of already preparing their excuses as to why they cannot change their current model. And I find that really I do not want to be other people's fig leaf. And like, listen, talk to your own God. They're going to judge you, not me. Leave me alone. I'm just trying to save my soul right now. I can't be your excuse. Yeah, I think it's a really short-sighted question, I think. But you're right. We're asked it all the time, and with differing levels of resentment. Actually, there's a really if I do a pitch to a load of chief execs, and not pitch, sorry, got one of these to a load of chief execs, you see they're like, why? You're like, chill out, bro. Come on. I'm not doing this to make you feel bad, and that's yeah. I think.
And do you think that, I mean, I'm just wondering, what are the barriers for other theatre companies, venues to not step into that space? Like, from your conversations that you've had with people, what is it?
I think two things. The first of which is, if you don't have, I mean, we're incredibly privileged here. We have a space, we have money, we have a set of skills because of the type of work we're very practical, logistically minded. So I think if you're a freelance artist, you're quite rightly just trying to keep you're just trying to navigate the world. If you're an organization, I think a really interesting thing for us is where real authority lies and where risk lies. So for example, and this is really boring, this isn't the big dreamy stuff, but we're not a charity, we don't have a board, because what we do is quite risky. Like, it used to be physically risky and now it's quite sort of politically risky. So we're trying to hold the risk so that we can take responsibility. If I was abdicating that risk to some other people who had a greater distance to it, they might have chosen to save their reserves, make their staff redundant, shut up. They might have chose to hibernate in order to survive. The risk for us in doing that was we wouldn't have been able to look our community in the face. So we knew that we catastrophize a lot in order to motivate ourselves. That's one of our coping mechanisms. But actually, it wasn't very hard to get to a catastrophe of saying, if we go away now for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, and we return to this community in a year's time and reopen, we're done. We are done. Like, that's it. So actually, we need to embrace this moment, or come up with a brand new mission. And our mission has always been very clear. We are to provide the people of Holbeck the best cultural life that they want and we can achieve. It's that simple. And we would not have been able to do that if we'd gone. It would have been over. There would be no Swung Low. There would just be a pot of money from the Arts Council. What is the point of that?
I think if I can come in here, because one of the things that you've touched on, Alan, the idea that, these are the small bits, and this isn't the interesting, the big dream stuff. And what I love, Adrienne Marie Brown, I will quote her till the cows come home, but she talks about change as being fractal, and how you do the small things is how you do the big things. So even like down to the nuts and bolts, you have to get the boring things right to do the dream. You have to get, that's where change starts from, and that and there are patterns that, in the same way, repeat in nature, repeat in movements. So I always think, we never minimize the small stuff. And I've noticed that, because there's loads of, like, you can't see everyone, Alan, but there's loads of like and like emojis and stuff. So I want to come to Ashok, and then if Sandra doesn't want to share maybe out loud, I will happily read out what Sandra put in the comments. But if we can start with Ashok.
Yeah, thanks. What, can you hear me? Oops.
All good.
Hi, yeah, good. I've got a habit of talking with the microphone switched off. I just noticed with both of the stories, there was one of the underlying things that both of you were looking at is this idea of superiority, and the breaking of that, and that sits at the heart of a lot of kind of ideas around giving up space and taking space, or whatever. I mean, subconsciously we're almost kind of we are kind of taught to think the Darwinian way of doing things is the best way, because it enables some people to keep their power. And it's when you actually start to chip away at that, that you kind of start to break things down. I mean, with Joon Lynn's story, it was kind of like a tipping point, and it sounds as if there's a realization that we're all equal. And when we actually realize that we're all equal, that's when we can actually start to share things rather than hold things. I just wanted to kind of like ask about your thoughts about kind of like this idea of inferiority and superiority, you know, in the spaces that you kind of like work in, or in the spaces that you're kind of imagining as well. Do you want to elaborate a little bit?
No, Alan, do you want to go, or shall I start first?
You go and I'll follow on.
Hi, Ashok. This notion of inferiority or superiority, I think I can speak like many others who identify as a woman of color, that I've had to do a lot of unlearning in myself and who my standards and my benchmarks are made by. And this has been also, you know, this is like continual work. So I've had multiple generations of my family that have been, that have lived under colonial rule in different parts of this world. And everything that was white was better. So it's been a long process of trying to create spaces in which all the different aspects of myself are seen, and trying to, and I think the way that I've approached battling this need to decolonize my identity, my beauty, my cultures, the way I live, my imagination, has been to build these spaces where I can identify with others who want to reclaim a history and a set of histories in which I'm a protagonist. And then together to collectively think, what is the future that we want? What does it mean to center ourselves in the future? And this is a really beautiful, complex, time-consuming activity that will take my entire life. I'm sure of it. So in the future that I imagine, I am always imagining ongoing work that does not fit the timeline of my singular life, but is built on so many generations before me who have done exactly the same thing in different contexts and circumstances. And my expectations of my life has been really reduced. I just want to hand over something a little bit better. And hopefully structures and containers that allow that flow of energy and that flow of resource to go to the next generation. And so in that future, people won't have to do the same thing that I did or past generations did. But that's my understanding of inferiority and superiority at the moment.
Yeah, there's a real sense though that the reason people do bad things to other people is because they think that they know better. You know, our government thinks that not giving school meals to children during holiday periods is because they know better, because they think that those kids are going to misuse that food or whatever, or the parents are going to become dependent on that or whatever. And it's that idea, that disconnected idea of disconnected idea of thinking that you're better than someone, or thinking that you know better than someone else. There's a kind of like a sense of a divide and a space between that needs to kind of then be reclaimed. So the conversation is the space.
Sorry, Alan, go ahead.
In my experience, it's not always even that competent. I think the reason why the government isn't giving food in the holidays is because the people in the room making the decision don't look after children, and they don't have the imagination to imagine what it's like to be looking after children and poor. And that's not in any way to abdicate them from. I would drag them by the back of their heads into the street, but I also kind of recognize that I've come to realize that it is as much incompetence and a lack of imagination and a failure of exactly as Joon Lynn says, and kind of imagine other people are also have their narratives and are the protagonists in their own story and are heroes in their own arc. And for us, that's I really, I mean, there is a part of me that who am I to say that isn't a really good lunch for Zara? I mean, you know, these things are, and I've really thought long and hard about that, whether I've accidentally become the problem. And where we are in Holbeck, what we do is leverage our perceived external value because of the market, because of high culture, because of all that nonsense, leveraging it in order to be able to bring resources to a place and then say to people, how would you like to use it? That is our solution to that problem of going, oh, we tiptoe between these different worlds. And I don't have an answer for you, Ashok. I think some of it is about dehumanization, but a lot of it is to do with the lack of imagination in our leaders collectively, not just national government, to imagine what it is like to be other people. And I'm sorry, that's not a very satisfying answer, but it's what I've got.
I think if we can come to Sandra, I don't know if you want to read your point, but it feels like it really connects. So earlier in the chat, AJ says, I'm still intrigued by what your young person, Alan, said by actually imagining. In a child's eye and mind, what does it mean to imagine? What does it mean to actually imagine as or like a child? And Sandra, I wonder if you can share what you've put.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I seriously don't want to take up too much airtime, and you all know I'm a gobshite, the people that know me. But I just think that one of the things that I've been really privileged at is that myself and our neighbours decided really early on in this pandemic that we would bubble together, because we share a garden, and I do jazz club with a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old, and it actually isn't jazz club; it's performance art club with fairy lights and an enormous imagination, because one of the children's got autism, or has autism or is autistic. So I've been privileged during this time that the comms I get from them when they're missing me is a paper aeroplane over part of the wall. So there's been something about being consistently around a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old that's really taught me, and I don't have children, I do other people's. And obviously we run a lot of programs in Friction as well for kids, but I think all the work we do with children and this experience every day is that that's a really big untold story during lockdown of how they're dealing with it, and we need to be listening to them. And yes, there's going to be trauma, and yes, there's going to be difficult things, but there's also an enormous amount of joy, and like, fuck it, I'm not dealing with this today, I'm just going to go off into Legoland or whatever I need to do. And I really think that's important. I just wanted to say as well, in answers in some way, not necessarily answer, Ashok, everything in this country is about position and who protects position. So on the one hand, they want you to flatten hierarchies. On another hand, they're absolutely obsessed with fucking leadership, which is also important. You know, I've been working in Indonesia. It's collectives and the kampung. There's a completely different way of organizing that's around flattening hierarchies. So in this country, and I encourage all artists to ask when they're being slightly manipulated, or if you're not sure what contract's being verbally made with you, ask yourself what position they've put you in and what position you want to be in that conversation before, because there's all these invisible contracts happening. So that's something else. And I just think there's this incredible optimism with children, and I think if we work with them, I mean, I am a militant optimist. Maybe I'm naive sometimes, but anyway, I'm doing what I said I promised I wouldn't do, which is chat too much shit.
I'm already so excited, and there are so many conversations and reflections that are happening in the chat. Louise has made an excellent point. I'm conscious of time and wanting to really honour the time that we've set and the breaks that we hope that you can have throughout the day. So we're gonna pause it here for now, and I say pause because if you are joining us throughout the day or throughout tomorrow, these are things that undoubtedly are going to re-emerge, and there will be space for this. If anyone gets time to read Louise's comment, please do. But otherwise, we would love to keep the conversation going, you know, on social media. If you're on social media, please share your thoughts, your highlights, your reflections. Use the hashtag TSI 2021 so we can connect with the conversation and so that each of you can connect with each other. Feel free to share your socials in this chat as well, by all means. We're following some, but you know, we would love to see more following with each other and connection with our work. And to check out the rest of the program, if you haven't got a day pass already, there's so many sessions, so many incredible insights to come. If you have got a day pass already or a link to future sessions, have a look in your emails. There'll be a ton of links there for you to access the next series, and connect with the MAIA family. Check out the chat, add your socials, and please keep in touch with us. In the meantime, I would like to thank Alan Lane and Joon Lynn Goh so much. Thank you for your extraordinary sharing, your thoughts, your heart, your care, and all the work that you lead outside of this. So an honour to have you both. Thank you. Thank you. So for everyone else, the next session is at 12:15, and that is Black Artistry and Space. So please join us at 12:15 if you can. If not, we'll see you soon. Take care, everyone.